It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the world seemed to move at a steady, predictable pace. I was out making my deliveries in a worn-out blue uniform, the kind that spoke of years on the job. The streets bustled with people, some rushing, some lingering, but most oblivious to the man carrying boxes from door to door. That man was me. My name's Darnell. I've been delivering packages for nearly 6 years. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and there's a certain satisfaction in knowing I play a small part in making someone's day a little better. Still, not everyone sees it that way. That day, I pulled up to a gated community. You know the type: manicured lawns, towering gates, and houses so big they seem to stretch forever. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood where people usually look twice at someone like me, a black man in a delivery van, but this time I noticed a small group of people near the entrance. They were laughing and talking, probably neighbors out enjoying the day. As I stepped out of the van, I heard the first snicker, then a whisper, and finally a loud mocking voice. "Look at this guy," someone said, loud enough for me to hear. "Must be living the dream, huh? Driving that rusty old van around all day." I glanced over. A man in a crisp polo shirt and designer sunglasses was smirking, his wife giggling beside him. Another couple joined in with a chuckle. They didn't try to hide it. I kept my head down, pretending not to notice. My hands tightened around the package I was carrying, but I didn't say anything. Years on this job had taught me to pick my battles. Not everyone respects what you do, especially if they think they're better than you. Still, it stung. I wasn't just a delivery guy. I was a human being. But to them, I was invisible. No, worse than invisible. I was a joke. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and walked toward the house where the package was meant to go. What they didn't know was that the day wasn't over yet, and neither was my story. The laughter followed me as I made my way to the house. It was like a bad memory that wouldn't let go. But as I walked up the pristine driveway, something happened that caught me off guard. The homeowner, a man in his early 40s with a kind face, opened the door before I could even ring the bell. He looked at me, then glanced past me toward the group still chuckling by the gate. His brow furrowed. "Hey," he said, his voice warm but firm. "Everything okay out here?" I nodded quickly, not wanting to make a scene. "Just here to drop off your package, sir." He took the box from me but didn't step back inside like most people would. Instead, he looked me in the eye. "Thank you for bringing this. Would you mind coming inside for a moment? I have something I'd like to show you." I hesitated. This wasn't normal. Most people wanted their package and nothing more, but something about his tone told me to trust him. Sure," I said, following him into the grand foyer. The place was massive, with high ceilings and polished floors that seemed to sparkle. It smelled of fresh flowers and expensive candles. He led me into what looked like an office. There was a large desk, bookshelves lined with awards, and framed photos on the walls. He gestured for me to take a seat. "You probably don't remember me," he began, sitting down across from me. "But I remember you." I blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, sir. Have we met before?" He smiled faintly, his eyes softening. "We have. A long time ago." It took me a moment to place him. The more I studied his face, the more familiar it seemed. Then it hit me. "You're Marcus Grant," I said slowly. My voice caught in my throat. "From high school." He nodded. "That's right. I wasn't sure you'd recognize me." Marcus Grant, the star quarterback, the guy everyone wanted to be friends with. And me? Back then, I was just a quiet kid, trying to stay out of trouble. We weren't exactly close, but I remembered him well enough. "What are you doing here?" I asked, still processing. "I mean, in a place like this." He chuckled. "That's a long story, but let's just say I worked hard, got a few lucky breaks, and ended up here. What about you?" I hesitated. It felt strange talking about my life in this lavish house. I'm just doing my job, trying to make ends meet. He leaned forward, his expression serious now. Darnell, do you remember what you did for me back in high school? I frowned, trying to think. Not really. I mean, we didn't hang out much. He nodded. That's true. But there was one day that changed everything for me. I was being picked on by some older guys in the locker room. They cornered me, and I thought I was done for. Then you walked in. I blinked. The memory was faint, but still there. Oh yeah, I told them to back off. You didn't just tell them, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. You stood up for me when no one else would. You told them if they laid a hand on me, they'd have to go through you first. They laughed, but they backed off. You saved me that day. I shrugged, feeling awkward. It wasn't a big deal. It was to me, he said. I never forgot it, and when I saw those people laughing at you outside just now, it brought everything back. You didn't deserve that. Marcus stood up and walked over to one of the shelves. He picked up a framed photo and handed it to me. It was a picture of him shaking hands with a group of men in suits. At the bottom, the words read, Marcus Grant, CEO of Grant Industries. I stared at the photo, my mouth dry. You're a CEO? He nodded. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for people like you. That's why I want to do something for you, Darnell. I shook my head quickly. You don't have to do that. Really, I'm fine. No, he said firmly. This isn't about charity. It's about paying it forward. I've been looking for someone to lead a new logistics project for my company, someone I can trust. And I think you'd be perfect for the job. I stared at him, unable to speak. A job? At his company? This couldn't be real. You'd have to go through some training, he continued. But I'll make sure you have everything you need. What do you say? For a moment, I couldn't find the words. Then finally, I managed to speak. I don't know what to say. Thank you. His smile widened. Don't thank me yet. Just promise me you'll pay it forward someday, the way you did for me. As I left his house, my head spinning, I noticed the group near the gate was still there. Their laughter died down as I walked past them, but I didn't bother looking their way. I didn't need to, because this time, I wasn't just the delivery guy. I was someone with a story they'd never understand. And as I got into my van and drove away, I couldn't help but smile. Life has a funny way of turning the tables.